Hey guys, Fox here, and today we're going to be talking about another player getting signed. This time, it is another All-USFL member, but it is the championship game MVP Victor Bolden Jr. Victor Bolden Jr., it's great to see him get signed. He was a very, very good player in the league. His stats pretty much show it. Yeah, there's a lot of images you need to take in here. First of all, he was an All-USFL wide receiver. Even though I don't think he should have been it, but he still was. He was an All-USFL special teamer, which he should have been. He was the MVP of the championship game. And in terms of the draft, he was the first wide receiver picked. The round 13, the USFL draft is by position. He was the first wide receiver taken. In terms of his career, in the NFL-wise, he was with the Niners on their roster for a couple of years, and the Bills 1 year. Then he's with the Lions for a few years as a practice squad offseason guy. He actually did play in a couple games, but he only had a few receptions. He was mainly a decent kick returner, and that was pretty much it. As for the USFL, he finished 4th in receiving yards at 415 and 1st in overall yards at 1,209. That is also despite playing only 9 games. Overall, he was a very solid player in pretty much all 3 facets, punt return, kick return, and receiving-wise. And he definitely did deserve to get, signed by a team. The Cardinals, however, are pretty weird in their wide receiver group. As you can see, there's a big SUSP on DeAndre Hopkins. He has a multi-game suspension due to, PEDs, stuff like that got caught with him. So that starter position is kind of open, though it's probably going to be Rondale Moore. But overall, the starters are Hopkins, Brown, and AJ Green, Hollywood, who they just traded for. And Rondale Moore will probably overtake D-Hop. Then Antoine Wesley, Greg Dortch. Then third string, Andy Isabella, Andre Baxiella, and Christian Blake. And then 4th string, Victor Bolden, naturally, Javonte Payton, and John Trey Kirkland. And there's a couple of these guys who are pretty much above him in kick returner as well. But as for the players that are pretty much the, not so good ones, Javonte Payton, John Tay Kirkland, and Andy Baxiella are either first-year or second-year guys who have never played an NFL game. So there's a good chance that Victor can easily overtake them. Then Greg Dortch was a returner and a receiver who pretty much started a couple games, didn't do anything, and hasn't really done anything overall. Victor can definitely overtake him in both the return game and in the receiving game. And then Christian Blake, he's been in the league a couple of years, but he's pretty much been just the Falcons, and he's never had more than 200 yards in a season, though he's played in a few games. In terms of the good receivers, 2 of them are on the lower end, the one's on the higher end. Antoine Wesley and Andy Isabella are on the lower end of the decent ones. Antoine Wesley has been in the league a couple years, practice squad first, but with Arizona last year, he did start 4 games and he had 208 yards. He was decent. Andy Isabella, overall, has had 200 yards 1 year, over 150 twice, but last year he only was in 8 games and he only had 1 reception in the season, so he's not panning out as a second-round pick as well as they hoped. Rondale Moore, however, has had a very solid rookie year. He started 7 games, and in total he had 435 yards and a touchdown. He also had 76 rushing yards, which is pretty nice to see. He did fumble the ball 3 times, though, which isn't good, but he was a solid kick and punt returner, and he is the starter in both. Though I do feel like if the team doesn't want to, push him out, since they're going to make him the starter, there's a chance Victor could overtake him in the return game. As for the main 3 receivers, D-Hop, we already know who he is. When he's healthy and plays a lot, the past few years, he's been a spectacular receiver. He's been in voting for Offensive Player of the Year. He's been an All-Pro first team multiple years, Pro Bowler a lot of times. But dealt with some injuries last year. He's going to be suspended this year, so kind of got to see. AJ Green, who was with them last year, came here. He was decent. I think he was a lot better than people thought he was. He started 9 games, and he had 848 yards. He wasn't, spectacular for what some people might have expected. But having to, actually take some numbers and stuff with D-Hop not being there, it's pretty impressive what he did. And then last but not least, Hollywood Brown is the guy that they just traded for. Hollywood has overall been a very solid player, despite all the reports about him, being not great because of Lamar. And I say that because he did have 1,000 yards last year, and whether or not you're a believer in Lamar Jackson or not, you have to understand that he still did have 1,000 yards with a quarterback that some people don't think is accurate with the football, which is pretty impressive. I know some people expected more of him, but overall he's been solid. So as for our boy, I think Victor can definitely overtake a good amount of these players in the 4th and 3rd string. And I think he can be a decent second string player if he, works hard and gets up there. So I guess we'll see. This has been Zom Fox. If you enjoy this content, want to be notified as soon as I upload any videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. And as always, have a great night.